friends, welcome to Produce is People, the podcast with Nate Montgomery, the produce champion. I hope you enjoy the show. Make sure that you listen to it, make sure you share it, and make sure that you tell us what you think about it. Hey friends, Nate Montgomery, the produce champion here on Produce is People, a podcast about produce, everything from the farm to fork. I got a guest with us today. We're doing this remote, so he's all the way in Seattle. I'm here in Yakima. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Nate. It's great to see you.
Yeah, Patrick works for a company that's called Silo, and they are in the category of what you would call fintech, so finance and technology, as it applies to ag, as it applies to produce. And we share a similar background. I grew up in Guadalajara. I'm a gringo that grew up in Guadalajara. You're kind of the opposite, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm, I guess you could say half gringo. I was actually born here in Seattle. And then when I was 8 or 9, Mexican mother from Puebla, so that's central Mexico, about 2.5 hours southeast of Mexico City. We moved there, and then I lived there the next decade of my life, really. And then I came back to the States, went to college in Eastern Washington. And then I've always been kind of working for different companies that are doing things with, Latin American cultures, kind of going back and forth across the border, so definitely, bilingual, bicultural, kind of just like you, a name that can throw people through a loop once we start speaking in Spanish.
So it's interesting that the bilingual and bicultural importance and significance. I'm going to mention this. I'll probably get in trouble for it. But here locally, we have a famous artist, Yaritza, and her siblings that sing with them, and they're in a bunch of hot water because they grew up in small town Washington, and even though their heritage is Mexican, they're small town Washington kids. And so they went to Mexico City, and they made some comments about how they weren't wild about the noise and the sirens and the whatever. Probably the same thing they would say if they went to New York, but they're catching a lot of grief for it because although they speak the language, they don't speak the culture, and that's gotten them in trouble. So it's important.
Yeah, it changes. It's interesting. It's I've spent a lot of time. I basically grew up, I guess, bilingual. I guess people ask me, how did you get so good at both languages? And it was just innate. And then, of course, with schooling and everything like that. But, it takes different muscles, when you speak different languages. So you have to kind of change that, but also the chip, right? When I go home, I realize that driving is going to be a bit different than here in Seattle, where people take 4 seconds when it goes green to accelerate. You know what I mean? But if you were in New York, you get honked at. So, you just have to be malleable. You just understand that, hey, things change, and there's no one way.
I heard the famous quote about dealing transnationally is you don't have to be flexible. You have to learn to be fluid.
Yes.
And that applies to produce. So here we are talking about produce. You work for a company called Silo.
Yeah.
And you have a couple of different tools that you offer customers. Some more in the tech side, some more in the software almost. Although I think you're like cloud-based, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And then you offer some tools for financing, for cash flow and all that. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for Silo, and I represent Silo in the Northwest and then in Arizona. And essentially my job is to talk to grower shippers, distributors, wholesalers, retailers, and understand kind of what their current state of the biz is, where they want to go, and if there's an alignment between that and what Silo's now doing for over 200 customers, across the U.S.
Wow.
One of the things I like the most is really just talking to people and understanding kind of what they do, but also, when you go to a store and you see a tomato that's packaged, right, cherry tomatoes, or you see broccoli that's it's beautifully presented, that's the end product that the end user kind of sees, and they don't see the 5,900 steps to get that perfect piece of broccoli to, that Safeway, that Trader Joe's, that, local market that you might be shopping at, and that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, I always talk about all the hands. When you think of a piece of fruit, you think of all the hands that touch that. And there's the physically touch it in the growing and the harvesting and the packing and the delivery. But there's all the other hands too that are involved in making it happen. And your kind of niche, it seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is not really targeting the mega transnational corporations. You're really targeting small and medium growers and packers, distributors, and helping them kind of level up so that they can compete on a level playing ground, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the biggest things we see is just the disparity between the tools and the offerings that, a small to medium business can get access to versus, a large multinational or just a large local business, right? So what we're kind of doing is trying to create these opportunities so that these small and medium businesses can level up. They can leverage tools. They can turn their data into actionable insights so that they can make better decisions, faster decisions, more informed decisions that ultimately can result in fresher food, fresher produce, money back into the business. A lot of these small to medium businesses are family owned. They invest in their community. They invest in kind of those local things, which again for me just is super important with any sort of business that I'm working with. Is what is the direct impact of what I'm doing, and it's not only just the business impact, but it's also how does that ripple effect occur in their surrounding communities.
Well, I've got a quick question for you.
Sure.
I've only been involved in produce itself for just a couple of years, but is there a life lesson? Is there something that you have learned in produce that you say, man, I didn't know this before, but I'm really glad I've learned? Fill in the blank.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most recently it's a lot of times the growers, the shippers, they're making decisions on a future trend that they believe is going to be a trend still, and that a lot of it is driven by the consumer, you and me going to the grocery store and kind of voting with our dollars as to what we're consuming, and just the tons of different packaging. And so the strain that some of these businesses get under. You go to Costco, you get one type of packaging. You go to Walmart, you get a different type of packaging. You go to Trader Joe's, you get a different type of packaging. And sometimes these tomatoes come from similar places. And these folks, that has to get into the packaging. You know what I mean? And so that's, to me, it's just that's something that's just really being conscientious of that.
When I grew up, it was going to the tianguis, and it would just be a big pile of stuff on a burlap sack on the ground, and they would serve it from there. Talk about food safety challenges.
Created or not created by the user.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure there's plenty more that we could talk about, but let's leave it there, and we'll circle back around. I'd love to have like a Q&A at some point, and maybe you can be a part of that.
Absolutely.
But again, just thank you for your involvement. Thank you for your time. Friends, follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Patrick promised that he would do a little TikTok dance with me. So we'll hold him to that.
I'm there.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for watching or listening. And again, like I said, share. In produce, as in social media, if you like it, share it. So that's the show, folks. Make sure that you like it. Make sure that you share it and follow us on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. We're in all the socials, even on YouTube. Make sure you follow us, share it, and like it.